The NFL Today. Brought to you by the Foundation for Full Service Banks, on behalf of all full-service banks in your area. And by Hertz, where you don't just rent a car, you rent a company. And by Gillette Platinum Plus, the new razor blade with the platinum alloy edge.
From Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington, Minnesota, it's the National Football League Championship game. The Minnesota Vikings play host to the Cleveland Browns. Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Ray Scott. Pat Summerall is here. Bruce Roberts is here. And by my side is Paul Chrisman. Paul, how do you figure today's game?
Ray, it's a little bit tough to figure, but we can say this. Last week, the Rams had some degree of success in running, in the first half at least, against the great front four of Minnesota. But today they are facing Leroy Kelly, probably one of the finest runners in the NFL, and Bo Scott, who had a great game just last week. There is no question that Cleveland's running game consists of a trap and a sweep. It's a very simple offense, but they've made it very effective through the years.
Paul, do you eliminate entirely any psychological edge that might belong to the Vikings as a result of their one-sided victory over the Browns here a few weeks ago?
I do eliminate it, Ray, because what looks good to the Vikings might make the Browns just that much madder this time.
Okay, Paul. We'll join Pat Summerall in CBS Control in just a moment as the NFL Today continues.
In 1965, we developed an experimental blade called EB7, stainless steel with a plastic coating. Today, we've developed a better blade. Not EB8, 9, or 10. It's EB11 with a new platinum alloy edge that's harder than stainless and more durable than chrome. To shave you not just cleaner, but smoother. EB11. We call it Gillette Platinum Plus. The blade you've always wanted, and more.
Over the years, we at Hertz have learned what it is to travel, to be lost, to be without a place to stay, or know where to get a decent meal. So, as a company, we've trained our people to help and given them the means with which to help. We've taught them that renting you a Ford is just where they begin.
This, of course, is the 50th year of professional football, and as you look back at the history of this great game, it seems that each period, each 10 years, was dominated by one or two teams. As you look back at the 30s, it was the Bears, the Giants, and the Redskins. After the war, the battles between the Cardinals and the Eagles. In the early 50s, it was the Cleveland Browns and the Detroit Lions. Later in the 50s, of course, those memorable years between the Baltimore Colts and the New York Giants. Then as you come to the 60s, with a possible interruption here or there from the Cleveland Browns, the 60s belong to the Green Bay Packers. Join us now as we go back and look at just a few of the highlights of those first 50 years.
In 1920, George Hellas founded the NFL, and as coach of the Chicago Bears, he gave the game its first great superstar, and Red Grange ran wild. In 1933, George Preston Marshall won his fight for an NFL championship game, matching the winners of the Western Conference and the top team in the East. Fittingly, Hallis's Bears were the Western champs, their foes the New York Giants, and on a cold day in Wrigley Field, they defeated the Giants 23-21. The same two teams met in the 1934 game. Unable to find footing or success on the slippery field, the Giants trailed 13-3 late in the game. But the team's trainer spent the third quarter in search of tennis shoes. He found them, and with solid footing beneath them, the Giants scored 27 points in the final quarter to win 30-13. In 1937, a rookie named Barr quarterbacked the Washington Redskins to an NFL title as the Bears fell beneath slinging Sammy's arm 28-21. But the decade still belonged to the Bears and the Giants, who had struggled for 7 years, both teams stalking a dynasty. By 1940, neither team had a clear edge, but the Bears had the stubborn mind of George Halas on their side. With Sid Luckman as quarterback, Halas drew diagrams, and his Bears followed them to perfection, as they routed the Redskins 73-0 in the 1940 title game. It still stands as the most one-sided game in championship history. Chicago and the T were to go on to dominate most of the decade. But in 1948 and 1949, the Philadelphia Eagles shook up the balance by winning back-to-back championships for the first time in NFL history. With Steve Van Buren leading the charge, Philadelphia seemed well prepared for the 50s. But the Cleveland Browns and their great quarterback Otto Graham came onto the scene in 1950. A superb passer and respected leader, Graham led his team to a divisional championship in each of his 10 years as quarterback. By 1946, his team had played in 6 NFL championship games and won 3 of them. Graham and the Browns were a sensation in the 50s. They might never have lost had it not been for the Detroit Lions and Bobby Lane. Lane had a way with men. He was a commanding leader, gaining both the respect and fear of all those who played for him. He passed a curious jinx over the Browns as the Lions beat Cleveland in the 52, 53, and 57 title games. The most famous game of the decade matched Johnny Unitas and the Colts against feared quarterback killer Sam Huff and the Giants. This 1958 championship has been called the greatest game ever played. With the score tied at the end of regulation play, a sudden death overtime was begun, the first in championship history. Alan Amici went in for the touchdown, and the Baltimore fans went wild. America had a new sports idol, and the game of football was ready to blast into the television age of the 60s. It was time for Vince Lombardi to charm the football world and beat everybody in sight. The Packers completely dominated the decade, playing in 6 NFL championship games and winning 5 of them. Lombardi was the king, and his kingdom was never on better display than in 1967 when the Pack played Dallas. Incredible code, incredible fans, and a block by Jerry Kramer. The Pack wins for the 3rd year in a row. Lombardi becomes a legend. Today, the Browns and the Vikings battle for power. The winner may start a new dynasty, but the Packer legend will be hard to overcome.
And now we'll take a look at some more recent history, and we'll be back with the last game the Browns and the Vikings played in just a moment as the NFL Today continues.
Remember Tom Harmon, the kid who had trouble keeping his shirt on? Well, now my grandchildren are pushing me around. You know, at my age, you have to live smarter if you want to stay on the young side. Sensible exercise and sensible eating, starting with a good breakfast like Kellogg's Product 19. The only cereal with 100% of the minimum daily adult requirements for vitamins and iron. Delicious, too. Want to get back on the young side? Start with Kellogg's Product 19.
In Kellogg's Corn Flakes, you get more of the marvelous things in store for you in corn. You get more of the marvelous richness, more of the marvelous flavor, more of the marvelous nourishment of corn to savor. Crisp by Kellogg's into famous flakes with more of the marvelous moreness. Kellogg's Corn Flakes moreness, more of the marvelous moreness of corn.
It was mid-season the last time these two teams met. Like now, Cleveland had just come off a big win over Dallas. That time the score was 42-10. Last week, the Browns beat Dallas 38-14. When they came to Metropolitan Stadium before, Cleveland lost 51-3. Let's take a look.
Joe Kapp warmed up and wondered. Bill Nelson seemed smooth and weathered. His form was on. But the Vikings were perfect. Led by the purple front four, the Vikings defense put Nelson through a meat grinder, and out came a tender lamb. And when the front four led up, it was only so the secondary could make the Cleveland receivers forget about catching the ball. As good as the defense was, Joe Cap and the offense were better. Cap and wide receiver Gene Washington, number 84, put on a stunning exhibition. When it was over, Washington had caught 7 passes for 119 yards and 3 touchdowns, all in the first half. On one play, Cap simply pointed out to Washington where he was going to throw the ball. Incredibly, he was not covered, and the Vikings jumped to a 27-3 lead. But it wasn't all passes as the Viking runners tore through the Brown defense. Cleveland runners could gain only 42 yards rushing all afternoon, and a total of only 8 first downs. The Vikings scored the first 9 times they had the ball, and punted only once. But the best show was still Cap and Washington. In what is becoming his expected style, Cap rolled out and then looked the other way, getting ready to jump another touchdown pass to Washington. When it all ended, the Vikings were on the top side of a 51-3 score, the biggest rout of the year and the worst in Browns history. It was a day the Browns will certainly have in the back of their minds when they take the field today.
We'll see how the Browns and Vikings got into today's championship game in just a moment as the NFL Today continues.
Recommended you. We're new in town. You see, I've just...
I'll tell you why. Because I want our savings where they're safe. You know what happened to my uncle?
I need both a checking account and a safe deposit box. That way my records will be both straight and...
Radio heater, white wall, stick shift. Safety option, convenience option.
His grandfather just bought him 10 shares of stock.
It's a real good bargain, and I don't want to miss it. So I'll need to make up the extra with a loan.
Clean up those medical bills.
Want to give me a name of a good banker? I've been transferred to Los Angeles.
Only a full-service bank can do it all for you. How can you tell one? For one thing, if the place you save can't offer you a checking account, it's not a full-service bank. Whatever your banking needs, look for this symbol of service.
A week ago, Paul Chrisman and Ray Scott were here in Minnesota watching the Rams play the Minnesota Vikings. The next day, Jack Buck and I were in Dallas, where Dallas was favored over the Cleveland Browns. Let's take a look at some of the highlights of that game. First time Cleveland had the ball, they were forced to punt. Don Cockcroft got out of a high short punt. Bob Hayes had signaled for a fair catch. The lineman down underneath never saw the ball. The ball bounced off Rayfield right. Cleveland recovered, and you could almost see Dallas wilt at that point. Bill Nelson went right to work. To Warfield, who had a great day. This in the early minutes of the first quarter. Nelson again, this time dumped right over the middle to Morin. And this sets up the first Cleveland touchdown. And here is the touchdown, the one that gave Cleveland a 7-0 lead, a block by Kelly in front, and Bo Scott gets in. He's their new fullback. He replaced Ron Johnson. Nelson again in action. He fakes the end sweep to Kelly, a maneuver that he used throughout the day. He finds Morin again. It seems that Morin always has big days against Dallas. Nelson, spectacular throughout the day. This time to Warfield at the 1. Cleveland was penalized 5 yards because of backfield in motion after this, so now they're back at the 6. They put this play in the day before the game. Nelson to his tight end Morin, 89. Cleveland got the ball in the closing seconds of the first half after Dallas had to give it up. Nelson fired strike again, this time to Warfield in the middle. Cleveland throws to a wide variety of receivers, as you'll see. Morin clears the area. Nelson throws down the middle to Bo Scott. Scott fumbles, and it's recovered by their offensive center, Fred Hoagland. They got a field goal just after that from Don Cockcroft, and at halftime it was 17-0. The Cleveland Browns over Dallas, and Dallas fans hoped that something could take place at halftime that might get their team back on the right track. Such was not to be the case. In the early moments of the third quarter, Craig Morton, who had a tough day for Dallas, back to pass. Must be excellent coverage. Fine rush by Cleveland, and Houston intercepts and rambles down the sideline some 33 yards before they can get him down. Nelson went right back to work. He lost none of his sharpness at halftime. Screen pass to Kelly. Behind excellent blocking down in front. Kelly almost got in. Now, from the end zone, the second touchdown of the day by Cleveland fullback Bo Scott. That's Bob Lilly coming across in front of him, and that should give you some indication of the strength that Scott possesses. Nelson on a draw to Leroy Kelly. A fine block in front by Gary Collins, number 86, as you can see on Cornell Green. That's just at the end of the third quarter, beginning fourth quarter. Kelly gets his touchdown. That made it Cleveland 31, Dallas 7 at that point. This is the place we told you that they like to work on Cleveland. Walt Sumner intercepts. 88 yards later, Cleveland has its 37th and 38th point, as Don Cockcroft's extra point was good. And that's the way it was at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, pretty much a one-sided affair, 38-14, the final score. The day before, it was different here, wasn't it, Paul?
Pat, you had a lot of spectacular plays, a lot of running up and down the field, a lot of long passes, all that spectacular type of football. It was a kind of a grind-em-out football game here in the stadium at Minnesota. And here are the highlights here. This is Joe Kapp throwing to Washington to the outside, who falls and slips out of bounds there. The field, incidentally, was not frozen, but the field around was, right at the edge of the sideline. Here's Kapp again, and watch this. Washington once again on a crossover, and now Kapp throwing off the wrong foot again, as he so often does. Watch him now. Hits Washington, who keeps both feet in bounds, and that's the one that took them down to their first touchdown. This is Osborne. This is called second effort. Watch him now. He'll roll. He'll claw his way into that end zone. He does. That's a touchdown right there. We are at the half now, and despite the fact that we have shown you Viking highlights, the Vikings went into the dressing room behind 17-7. So we better pick up the second half highlights here, and this is Joe Kapp throwing to Washington. Watch, he'll make the catch, get up to run, and Pardee hits him and is penalized for doing so. There's quite a bit of discussion on this play. Now watch Kapp back to throw, and this is why he is so very valuable. He cannot find a receiver. Watch what he does. Down to the 1-yard line and puts him in great scoring position. Here's Osborne again. Watch him hit hard into this end zone now. Being led by Bill Brown. In he goes. Here's Osborne again. Now watch him roll here. He stopped. They need a first down. They need a couple of yards. He stopped, apparently cold. He rolls on, picks up about 4 yards and a very vital first down. Here's Kapp again now, taking him into scoring position. Once again, can't find a receiver. Watch what he does. Fine runner. He's directing traffic here now, telling the blockers out ahead of him to help out. Down to the 4-yard line. Watch the blocking. You can barely see it in the left corner of your screen. Kapp on a rollout, and he gets great blocking ahead of him. Nobody touches him till he just gets to the goal line. It's too late there. This is Roman Gabriel now. Carl Eller knocking him into the end zone for a safety. We're going to show you that in slow motion. Mr. Eller, 81, this great defensive end. Watch him go by Bob Brown, a fine offensive blocker, and pick off Gabriel right here. He was heading backwards, knock him into the end zone, and those were the last 2 points that the Minnesota Vikings scored. And, Pat, that's the way it went from here.
Two entirely different type of games. Paul and I'll take a stab at evaluating these two teams in just a moment as the NFL Today continues.
When you travel for a living, you travel when it's good for your business, not when it's good for you. While renting Fords over the years, we at Hertz have come to understand the plight of the traveling businessman. And instead of just offering you sympathy, we've actually devised a number of ways to help. You see, at Hertz, you don't just rent a car, you rent a company.
Search no more. The quest for the ultimate blade is over. Gillette introduces Platinum Plus, the blade with an edge of Gillette's astonishing new platinum alloy. Platinum Plus, harder than stainless, more durable than chrome, to shave you not just cleaner, but with more comfort than any blade in history. Gillette Platinum Plus, the blade you've always wanted, and more.
Paul and I have worked out our own rating system on these two teams, the Cleveland offense against the Viking offense, the Viking defense against the Brown defense. We used a scale of 10. 10 would be the maximum. Obviously, both of these teams would have to rank very high since they are in the championship game. And because Paul has been with the Vikings a lot more than I have, I think this is the 5th game he's covered of theirs, I've asked him to take the Viking defense. I'll take the Brown defense. So, Paul, the defense first.
Pat, I think we should mention here that Sherachman does a very workmanlike job as a cornerback here. Kasulki and Krause are fine safety men. Krause, the free safety man, and he does a good job of playing the ball all the time, which he should do. McBay, a note from the scouting book is this, that he likes to play back a little bit. He will give you a little of the short stuff, but he doesn't like to let you throw the long one on him. And he has intercepted a lot of passes this year because people have tried to get behind him. We rank these people about 8.5. Winston and Hilgenberg do an excellent job of playing the screens as well as the runs. They are fine outside linebackers. Warwick, we've mentioned so often, the middle linebacker, only has time to play the passer's eyes in certain cases, and he does this very well. When we get to the front four, this is where I think the Vikings will hang their hat, and that is that great pass rush. Mr. Eller we referred to as the chairman of the board, and he certainly is. These other people are just about as good. We cannot give them a 10 ranking because the Rams did a pretty good job of running on these two men the first half at least, but not so well the second half. But there's our total for the Viking defense, and let's have a little bit on the Brown defense, Pat.
This is the Brown defensive unit that Dallas coach Tom Landry described last week as being the one that would bend but would not break. Last week against Dallas, they didn't even bend. The front four, not very spectacular, certainly not as much publicized as the front four for Minnesota. The outstanding members, I think you'd have to say, would be the right end, Jack Gregory, and the left defensive tackle, Walter Johnson. The other two, Snido and Kanicki, as they say, give you a good game every week. The linebackers, Dale Lindsey, the middleman, started on the outside at the beginning of the year. Then they moved him to the middle linebacker position, and that seemed to be the move that sort of solidified the Brown defense. They are very active. All three of the linebackers get back very deep and help out the deep men in the secondary on pass coverage. Of the three, Houston is the best blitzer. The secondary, they say every secondary, every defensive unit needs a killer, one headhunter, so-called. Of that group, it would be Erich Barnes, the left cornerback. He's the one that sticks you. The leading pass interceptor is Mike Howell, who's the free safety. He intercepted 6 passes on the year. The place that everybody tries to work is on the rookie, the lone rookie in the secondary. That would be Walt Sumner, the right cornerback. Without success in recent weeks, he picked one off against Dallas last week, returned it 88 yards. We give him an 8 in all 3 categories for a total of 24. So the Vikings there have a 3-point advantage as far as we're concerned. Now, let's go back to the Viking offense and your appraisal, Paul.
And, Pat, we will start with the 2 outside men. Yari had a big week last week against the Deacon, a big game, I should say, did a fine job. Alderman's a fine workmanlike tackle. I'm speaking mainly of pass protection now. These 2 guards are pretty good pulling guards on the running plays. Tingelhoff has made All-Pro and is particularly adept at picking up the strays on the blitzing maneuver by the linebackers. When you get over to the receivers here, Washington and Henderson have 2 of the same type. They're both tall men. They do not run like Bob Hayes, but they are pretty fast. They get down the field well, and they have great jumping ability, believe it or not. This is a real asset in their favor. Many coaches have said that Beasley is really the bread and butter guy of this 3. I had one coach tell me, we contain these 2 men pretty well, but Beasley's the guy that beat us. We get over to the running backs. They are the same as the entire Viking team. They are not spectacular. They just get the job done. The same can be said of Joe Kapp, who is not a classic passer, is not anything. All he does is win, and that's the way this ball club has gone all year. We add up to 25.5 for the Viking offense, Pat.
The Brown offense, spectacular, I think, is an adjective you could use to describe them. The offensive line, Shafrath, Damari, Hoagland, Hickerson, and Clark, is as fine a unit as you'll find anywhere. The 2 tackles, Clark and Shafrath, both are very quick. They can get out in front of Leroy Kelly on the quick pitches, and the 2 guards, the same thing can be said for them. Damari and Hickerson. Hickerson, probably the best pulling guard in football anywhere. He has been for a long time. He's lost none of his quickness, none of his speed. The receivers, again, I think as a unit, they are probably as fine as anybody in professional football. Warfield, the most dangerous, I think. Collins coming off of one of his finest years. He caught 54 passes. Moore in the tight end is classic in size, 6'4" and 250, and he has the speed and strength to take a ball out of a crowd and get away from the tacklers. The running backs, Leroy Kelly, I think enough has already been said about him. He is probably one of the finest in the business. But you ask any of the members of the Brown team, whether it be offense, defense, special teams, coaches, whatever, they'll tell you the man that's pulled the whole club together is Bill Nelson. And his performance against Dallas last week, I guess, could be described as spectacular. 27.5 points, then. We give the running backs and Nelson 9, the receivers 9.5, the offensive line 9. So we get 27.5. We beat you by 2 there. If you total this up, you'll see that the Vikings only have a 1-point advantage, as far as we're concerned, over the Cleveland Browns. Yet in regular season, Paul, Minnesota won 51-3. How do you explain that?
That's just the way this ball club has been all year, Pat, as we have mentioned. They are not spectacular. They do the job. One plus I think we should mention for the Browns offense. Leroy Kelly, one of the great runners of the league. Also a very clutch pass receiver. He has fine hands and does a great job and has pulled them out of the hole many times. It looks like the Brown offense is going to go against the Viking defense, and particularly these people you've heard so much about, that front four.
Of course, as you think about it, there's so many intangible things. The weather, and then, of course, you can't forget about the leading scorer in the league, Fred Cox, who scored 121 points, the most ever for a kicker. That has to be a definite plus for Minnesota. We'll be back at Metropolitan Stadium in just a moment as the NFL Today continues.
There's no telling what you'll run into on the highways these days. But this new Superbelt tire has Firestone's exclusive triple-strength construction. Strong cords for extra long mileage. Strong sidewalls for extra long mileage. Strong bonding for extra long mileage. Firestone's new wide oval tire. Test after test shows it can give you up to 40,000 miles. If you're a sensible and law-abiding driver, even 50,000 miles and more. Get Superbelt for extra long mileage at Firestone, the mileage specialist.
Bruce Roberts down here at the field at Metropolitan Stadium, and if there is such a thing, it is pleasantly cold. The temperature is 9 degrees above, the winds out of the northwest at 10 miles an hour, and the sun is shining brightly. As far as the condition of the field is concerned, Dick Erickson and his ground crew here have done a truly remarkable job. Immediately after last week's Viking-Ram game, they covered the complete surface, including the end zones, with a 2-inch thick fiberglass blanket. That, in turn, was covered by a tarp, and then blowers were brought in to see that the ground did not freeze. And as of this moment, you can see the flamethrowers in the background. They're working at it. So we have fairly ideal conditions. But by halftime, the ground might freeze, and some changes will have to be made. That's the situation as of this moment. We'll be ready for the start of today's NFL championship game between the Cleveland Browns and the Minnesota Vikings after this pause for station identification.
The Minnesota Vikings and the Cleveland Browns battle for high stakes. For the winner, the NFL championship and a trip to the Super Bowl. Stay tuned for the action on CBS.
CBS Television Sports presents the National Football League Championship. Brought to you by Standard Oil Division, American Oil Company, who reminds you that you expect more from Standard, and you get it. And by new True Filter cigarettes, with or without menthol. And by Ford, who brings you better ideas for 1970.
Well, Paul, as far as the weather is concerned, we have sunshine. In case the sunshine should disappear here at Bloomington, Minnesota, the lights are turned on. The field, I think it's safe to say, to echo what Bruce Roberts said, is in as good a condition as it is possible to be at this time of year in this part of the country. Would you agree?
I agree, Ray. I don't think we're going to see any snow today. I think it's going to remain very cold because of the lack of cloud cover. And there is a possibility the field might freeze about the half, and if it does, it might change the rush of that great front four of Minnesota's.
The officials for our game today: the referee is Tom Bell, the umpire Joe Connell, the headlinesman George Murphy. Jack Fetty is the line judge, Ralph Vandenberg the back judge, Fritz Graff the field judge. There are alternates here today as well: Bernie Ullman and Bruce Finlayson. So, we'll be ready for the start of today's game in just a moment.
When you want a corner of the world, a place you know is meant to share, you seek the ones who have that word and look to them to guide you there. Hawaiians have been greeting United Airlines passengers to their little corner of the world for 23 years. And since then, United has flown more people to the islands from more cities than any other airline. And that's why we call it our little corner of the world. Come fly the friendly skies to our little corner of the world. We'll open up the way to discover what is there. Come fly the friendly skies of United.
To prove that Maverick is the simple machine, we asked 5 stewardesses to put it back together. They proved it. Maverick, the simple machine, still just $19.95, when everything else is going up.
The Cleveland Browns defensive unit has been introduced, and as you will judge by the roar of this capacity crowd, or near so, the Minnesota Vikings offensive unit is being introduced. Mick Tingelhoff of Nebraska, Jim Valone of Southern California, Milt Sunday of Minnesota, Grady Alderman from Detroit, Ron Yary of Southern California have all been introduced. Michigan State's Gene Washington, the split end, tight end John Beasley. Washington from Michigan State, Beasley of California. Dave Osborne, number 41, you saw a moment ago from North Dakota. Bill Brown, the fullback from Illinois. John Henderson, the flanker from Michigan. And the quarterback, there's Henderson, number 80. And the quarterback, Joe Kapp. I would say the calling out of his name evoked the greatest bit of applause we have heard so far today. Head coach Blanton Collier of the Browns was introduced. Head coach Bud Grant of the Minnesota Vikings. The Cleveland Browns have won 4 National Football League championships. They have appeared in 10 NFL championship games. In fact, they have appeared in 3 of the last 5. Their last championship came in 1964. They were on the losing end in championship games in 1965 and in 1968. Joe Kapp. I think that over these last few weeks, Paul Chrisman, our sports following public of this country has learned to know a lot about this young man.
He does everything the wrong way, you know, as we said. All he does is win, and I'm sure that's getting a little tiresome to hear, but it's just the way he plays ball. He apparently has a fine delivery here, but you see him in the ball game throwing with his right foot forward and his right foot sideways and every other way, but he gets the ball to the receivers, which is what counts, and he gets it there on time.
Referee Tom Bell indicating the Minnesota Vikings have won the toss and have elected to receive. The temperature, we will repeat, is 9 above zero. The wind is out of the northwest at 12 miles per hour. The playing field, and again we will say it, the playing field as of right now is in good condition. A comparison with last week when the Vikings played the Los Angeles Rams here, snow actually had crept onto just the edges of the playing field, necessitating sideline markers of a red-like dust. Well, now the same red dust is being used today, but the snow is well away from either sideline. So I don't think Paul will have any trouble in determining whether a player is in or out of bounds.
No, I don't think we will either, Ray. That red line shows up better than anything. And also, we remind you again, there are flags intermittently about every 10 yards along the field. And don't be surprised if you see one and a ball player rolls out of bounds. You might think automatically it is the goal line. It is not. There's a flag right there. And they're all along the sideline on both sides, just in case of any tough weather that they may need these days.
The flag raising is being taken care of by a combined color guard from the U.S. Army and Marine Corps. The Viking band, directed by Mr. Ralph Mendenhall, will play the anthem. The singing here will be led by Mr. Charles Wood. So our players are at attention, and we all join in the singing of our national anthem.
What so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
So the Minnesota Vikings make their first appearance ever in a National Football League championship game. With the exception of 9 first-year men, all of these Cleveland Browns were on the squad last year that lost in the championship game to the Baltimore Colts. Don Cockroft tees it up for Cleveland. Deep, number 40, Charlie West. Number 26, Clint Jones. So the talking and the writing are over. It's down to the playing. We're glad you're with us. The Browns and the Vikings for the National Football League Championship at Bloomington, Minnesota. Charlie West at the 8. To the 30. First man to meet him, Bill Andrews. As our game gets underway, we remind you, this telecast is presented by authority of the National Football League. It is intended for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or other use of this telecast without the express written consent of the National Football League is prohibited. Cap sends Henderson 80 to the left, Washington 84 to the right. From the Viking 30, first and 10. Cap intended for Henderson, broken down by Walt Sumner. You had a chance to see the Minnesota Vikings offensive unit, most of them at least. So right now, as the Vikings are 2nd and 10 from their 30, let's set up the Cleveland defense for you. Up front for Cleveland, Gregory 81, Kanicki 69, Johnson 71, and Snido 88. The 3 linebackers, in the middle, Lindsey 51, flanked by Garlington 50 and Houston 82. 2nd and 10, Minnesota. Bill Brown. 4 yards, 34-yard line. Lindsay stopped him. And now the Brown deep men. At the right corner, you saw him break down the first pass thrown, Walt Sumner, 29. At the left corner is 12-year veteran, number 40, Erich Barnes. Mike Howell, 34, and Ernie Kellerman, 24, round out the Cleveland secondary. For Minnesota, 3rd down 6 from the Viking 34. To the right, Henderson. To the left, Washington. Brown, first down. Linebacker Jim Houston made the tackle, but the Vikings have a first down.
Take a little look at it now. This is a draw type play. See him wait for the ball to be brought back to him. That gives a trap man time to get out there and make his block. And here's the cut as he gets to the line of scrimmage. Just moves slightly to the outside. Good gainer.
Result, gain of 9, 1st and 10 Vikings, Minnesota 43. To the wide side, the right is Henderson. For Washington. He was inbounds at the 24-yard line.
We'll give you a picture of this all alone. Now watch him. Washington, you will see his feet are in, even though his body may not. As he leans, oh, he's in all the way. It looked like his body was slightly out of bounds, but he did have both feet in. He caught the ball inbounds all the way, as it turned out.
So Cap to Washington, first down, Cleveland 24-yard line. Gain 33 yards. Washington left, Henderson right. Brown. He's inside the 20. Mike Howell of the secondary, 34. Walter Johnson, number 71, mainly responsible for stopping that play. But the ball, 18 and 19-yard line of Cleveland. It is 2nd down and 4.5. Our game is just underway as we look along the sideline at the Minnesota Vikings bench. Washington left, Henderson right. Osborne. He's inside the 10.
You know, that's the way Osborne has run the entire season. He's always got that second effort. Watch him now. He looks like he's stopped. There's a little crossbuck move there. He's hit. Bang. Rolls. Keeps going. Watch how much more yardage he picks up after he was apparently stopped. There's some real effort.
Sumner prevented a touchdown, perhaps. He was the last man. It's 1st and goal at the Cleveland 7 after 3.5 minutes of play. Henderson, incomplete, defending, Erich Barnes.
Now we got our first look at the elements. The elements in this case, end zone, although they claim it is not frozen, is apparently a little tougher than the playing field. Henderson tried to do a little maneuver there. Started in the end and tried to cut quickly and go to the outside, and he slipped a little bit. He didn't get any ground on the defensive man at all. They were both kind of skating around there as they ran through the end zone.
By the way, there was some doubt about footwear, but they are wearing regular football shoes. 2nd and goal at the Cleveland 7 for the Vikings. Brown. The fake was to Brown. Joe Cap kept it. Touchdown. Cap, I believe, wanted to give the ball to Bill Brown.
Watch, it's a busted play. This is the best bust in the world, 6 points. They ran into each other. He's supposed to go off tackle. and the defense moved to take Brown. Instead, Cap right up the middle, and you see what happened. 6 points.
Fred Cox, with Krause holding, will try for the 7th point. A penalty marker is down. Offside, Cleveland. It's declined. The extra point stands. It's 7-0 Minnesota. We'll be back with the Vikings kickoff in just a moment.
Pete, see you later. Take care of that leg, huh?
Yeah. Live it up, you guys. Well, I guess it's just you and me, buddy.
Yeah, me and my Winstons, me and my Winstons, we got a real good thing, a real good taste.
Hi.
Yeah, me and my Winstons, me and my Winstons, we got a real good thing.
When it comes to keeping a guy good company, there's almost nothing like a Winston. One taste, and it'll be you and your Winstons.
Me and my Winstons, me and my Winstons, we got a real good thing, 'cause my Winstons taste good like a cigarette should.
Yeah, Winston King or Super King, you got a real good thing.
So the Vikings go 66 yards and score on a play that was not intended to be. A 7-yard run by Cap. Cox kicks off. Deep are Morrison and Scott. Morrison just got his hands on it in the end zone for a touchback, but a Viking was there a split second after Morrison covered that ball. Touchback, Brown start from the Brown 20. 11:03 left first quarter, and the Vikings lead by 7-0 in their first NFL championship game ever. Starting for Cleveland in the backfield, Bill Nelson is the quarterback, number 16. Running backs are Kelly, 44, and Scott, 35. Kelly, 4 yards.
Carl Eller, number 81 here, against Monty Clark, the right tackle. Eller bypasses, is hit by 2 people, still splits him, makes the tackle, but for a 4-yard gain.
Second down, 6 Cleveland. Warfield, 42 left. Collins, 86 to the right. Bill Nelson. Bo Scott. First down, 38-yard line. Carl Eller made the tackle. Nelson, during the regular season, completed 54% of his passes. He threw 23 touchdown passes.
I'd say in the latter part of the season, particularly the last month, we have seen more and more of that last type of play. It's like a screen. 2 linemen get out there ahead of them, but it's just a quick swing pass to either side.
First and 10 Cleveland at the Brown 38. Intended for Morin. He collided with linebacker Wally Hilgenberg. Lonnie Warwick was back there too. It was Warwick that ran into Morin as the pass reached Morin. Second down, 10 Cleveland. 9:44 left first quarter. Vikings lead 7-0. Joe Cap ran 7 yards for a touchdown. He intended that Bill Brown have the ball. It didn't work out that way. To the right, Collins. To the left, Warfield. Tight end Morin is on the left side. Bo Scott, 43-yard line. Alan Page made the tackle.
Watch Hickerson now. We're going to show you this play again. I'm sorry. We're not coming back with this one.
On Saturday, January 24th, CBS will bring you a nighttime special, Harlem Globetrotters, The Road to Mexico. They always delight young and old alike. Meadowlark Lemon, the crown prince of basketball. Meadowlark will be there. That's the Harlem Globetrotters Road to Mexico, January 24 on CBS. Third down, 5, Cleveland. Incomplete. Bo Scott, the intended receiver. Bill Nelson heads for the sidelines. As for Cleveland, it is 4th and 5. 9:02 left to play. First quarter, Vikings lead 7-0. Charlie West, number 40. Bob Grimm, number 27, are the deep men.
And for what it's worth, they're in a terrific sun field in this first quarter. The sun is directly behind the kicker.
Cockcroft punting from inside the 30. Fair catch, West, 24-yard line of Minnesota. With the score, the Vikings 7 and the Browns nothing. Let's pause for a moment.
Mechanics have a ticklish problem with Amatone. It does part of their job. So as mechanics, they shouldn't like it. But as customers, they do. Who knows better what it does for your engine? Standard Oil dealers welcome mechanics in strict confidence. We won't tell if you don't. The one you like best just got better.
The Goodyear Custom Wide Tread Polyglass Tire.
38,000 miles on a set of tires is quite a few miles. I'd say you could go across the United States 2 or 3 times easy. And with 38,000 miles on them, I wouldn't be afraid to go across 2 or 3 more times. It's a real gripping tire on wet pavement.
If it doesn't say Goodyear, it can't be Polyglass.
Who went 66 yards for a touchdown after the opening kickoff and lead 7-0. Are 1st and 10 at their own 24. Cap still has it. For Washington. 35-yard line of Cleveland with Walt Sumner defending. It is incomplete. I'm trying to recall, Paul, did Cap mainly throw out of that little rollout last week against the Rams?
Yes, he did quite often, Ray. And in fact, in our highlights from last week, we showed him whirling out there and throwing that first pass to Washington down to the 2-yard line, which took them in for their first touchdown. On this last play, Washington faked a little sideline. It just took a jog step to the outside and kept right on going. Cap threw down the middle of the field. I don't know whether it's against the wind or what, but Washington had to circle in and couldn't reach it.
2nd down 10, Minnesota from the Viking 24. Brown, practically no gain. Ron Snido, number 88, mainly responsible for potting up the play. The Cleveland defensive unit. Gregory, Kanicki, Johnson, Snido, the front 4. There was a gain of a yard for Minnesota. It is 3rd and 9 at the Viking 25. 8:24 left to play first quarter. Minnesota leads 7-0, and Cap sends Henderson to the left and Washington to the right. Washington, his defender fell down. Touchdown.
Watch him now. Cap going back. I don't believe you'll be able to see Washington maneuver. But the defender did slip as he turned to cut over the middle. See how all alone he is here. No one within 10, 15 yards of him. In fact, you'll see he's kind of trotting here. He really isn't airing out because he has all the room.
Erich Barnes fell down around midfield. And so now the Vikings lead 13-0. And Fred Cox, with Paul Krause holding, will try to make it 14. 7:53 left to play first quarter. It is 14-0 Minnesota. We'll be back with the Vikings kickoff in just a moment.
When you spend your life working hard at something you like, you learn to take every little bit of goodness that comes along. You've earned it, and you know you really don't get any second chances. Because you only go around once in life, so you gotta grab for all the gusto you can, even in the beer you drink. Why settle for less? When you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer.
Joe Kapp has completed 2 of 5 passes. Gene Washington has certainly lived up to his reputation as one of the great deep receivers. The Vikings have a 2-touchdown lead. That kick is out of bounds, and there'll be a 5-yard penalty against the Vikings. The head coach of the Cleveland Browns is referred to over and over again in descriptive phrases like mild-mannered. The word gentlemanly is used, and certainly I'd have to say, Paul, he's one of the truly soft-spoken head coaches I've ever known.
But also one of the real greats in this coaching profession. Incidentally, among other people, he taught a young man named Bud Grant. He started him off.
And there is Bud Grant, the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. So now the Vikings will kick from their 35-yard line. Deep again are Morrison, 26, and Scott, 35. Bo Scott to the 25-yard line. Bob Grimm, number 27, bulldogged him to the ground. 1st and 10, Cleveland at the Brown 25. We have just about reached the midway point of the first quarter.
Those kickoffs that you saw, one out of bounds and the other that nearly went out of bounds on the opening kickoff, were not accidents. They are kicking, the kicker's kicking to the open space in the field, attempting to get the ball over there on a line drive.
Nelson has Warfield to the left and Gary Collins to the right. Kelly and Scott are the running backs. Ball batted down by Alan Page, number 88. It will be 2nd and 10. For the 3rd year in a row, CBS will televise a National Hockey Game of the week. That starts on Sunday, January 11, Super Bowl day. On that day, the NHL series will kick off with the defending champion Montreal Canadiens taking on the New York Rangers at 12:30 Eastern Time, Super Sunday, next Sunday on CBS. 2nd down, 10, Cleveland. Leroy Kelly from behind linebacker Wally Hilgenberg, the left linebacker, the right linebacker of the Minnesota Vikings.
And that was all Hilgenberg there because he played off a blocker, had a good lead on him. He still played him off well, made the tackle. You must also know, if you're watching, that this really puts the job on the offensive line of Cleveland now, because being behind 14 points in the first quarter, obviously Nelson will have to go to the air more often than he would like, so it would change his game plan. And also the defense, the Vikings, can afford to gamble a little more now.
It is 3rd and 10. There was no gain on the last play. Broken down at the 39-yard line by Winston and Kasalki, and except for their collision on a pass intended for Collins, it could well have been a touchdown. It could well have been an interception. It is now 4th and 10 as Cockcroft is punting from inside the 15 to Grimm and West. West at the 37. And that's all. Tonight on the Network of the Stars, CBS, a very special star-studded night for the entire family. Ed Sullivan starts off the evening with the new singing sensation Oliver. Roy Rogers and Dale Evans will be there, and the newest Dolly on Broadway, Phyllis Diller. Glenn Campbell's Good Time Hour will follow with music and dancing, an all-star show. Then the Mission Impossible team will join forces and will bring you a special chilling adventure of a bizarre mystery that might be the show of the year. Tonight on CBS. First down, Vikings, Viking 37. Bill Brown. Whistled dead at the 42.5 or 3-yard line as Snido and Houston made the stop. The Vikings are leading by 14-0, having scored the first 2 times they had the ball. We have word now from the sidelines that the playing surface is still generally good. There are a few spots that are frozen, and as a result, of course, are slippery. Brown picked up 5 yards, 2nd down 5 at the Viking 42. Bill Brown, and he loses. Ron Snido, the defensive end, number 88, made that fine defensive play, and for the Vikings, it'll be 3rd and now a little more than 5.
You know, just thinking, giving you the thinking of the quarterback, under normal circumstances, a quarterback in this situation would have a little bit of a tendency to be just a little cozy on this down because everybody's expecting a pass. I don't think you need worry about Joe Kapp. It doesn't matter what the score is. He's all out all the way.
Henderson is to the wide side, the left. Dave Osborne. Penalty marker down, a loss back to the 38-yard line. And Ernie Kellerman of the secondary, number 24, with help, mainly the man who stopped the play. But there was a penalty marker as the play was developing. 4:20 left to play first quarter. The Vikings lead 14-0. A clipping penalty. The Browns decline. They want the ball. It will be 4th down. 4th down and about 10. The punter for Minnesota is Bob Lee. And we have word from the sidelines that that clipping was on Henderson. Bob Lee punts. Reese Morrison, 35-yard line. He and Leroy Kelly were the deep men, and he fielded that one like an outfielder, Paul.
He did indeed, and also I noticed his white shoes, Ray. I think those are tennis shoes, but I can't be sure yet.
So the Browns down by 14-0, 4 minutes, 9 seconds left to play in the first quarter. Cleveland 1st and 10 at the Cleveland 34.5. Wide right, Collins. Left, Warfield. Tight end Morin on the right side. Leroy Kelly to the 37. He ran into Alan Page. Let's set the Viking defense for you now. You've had a chance to watch their offense most of the first quarter. The Viking defense, the front four, Marshall 70, Page 88, Larson 77, and Eller 81. The 3 Minnesota linebackers are Hilgenberg 58, Warwick in the middle 59, and to his left, Roy Winston, number 60. For Cleveland, 2nd down 8 at the Cleveland 37. Kelly. Fumble. Vikings have it.
Watch Hilgenberg, number 58 now. backing up here. He's gone back to protect. Now he comes in to make the tackle. Here's the fumble. He's hit. You see when he's hit the second time on the elbow from the rear, that's when the ball popped out.
Paul Krause, we believe, is responsible for the recovery. 1st and 10 Minnesota at the Cleveland 43. Osborne, about the 39-yard line, pinned down by the two Cleveland tackles, Kanicki and Johnson. Gain of 3, between 2 and 3. 2nd down, 7. 2.5 minutes left to play in the first quarter. Cap scored on a 7-yard run and then threw a touchdown pass of 75 yards to Washington as the defender Erich Barnes fell down. Bill Brown, he's down to the 35-yard line where it'll be a 3rd and about 2. Dale Lindsey, the middle linebacker, number 51, stopped the Minnesota running back.
In a way, he has a decision here. He has almost 2.5, almost 3 yards to go, which is a long way to run on 1 down. So you'd think he might go to the air. By the same token, if he wishes, he has 2 downs to make this because he would be around the 34-yard line, which, if he punted, would almost be back there into the end zone. So, you know, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
3rd and 2. Osborne, 1st down at the 30.
Second effort, Osborne. That's the way it is. Bounce and keep going. He's done it all season.
Number 41, Dave Osborne, a 5th-year running back from North Dakota. He's a 6-footer and 205. And that short run gave the Vikings a 1st and 10 at the Cleveland 30 with a minute and a couple of seconds left to play in the first quarter. And Wally Hilgenberg did recover that fumble in addition to forcing the fumble. Brown, oh, what a reception committee. Jack Gregory, number 81, met Brown at the line of scrimmage. Result, no gain.
And maybe a bruised middle. He was met at the pass. And when you're going forward full speed and suddenly going backwards, this is quite a jolt. He got it.
So the Brown defense sorely tested here in the first quarter, which has 25 seconds remaining and the clock running. The Brown defense digs in. Vikings 2nd and 10, Cleveland 30. At the 18-yard line, the pass is complete. Gene Washington, 1st down, and there was needle threading if I've ever seen it. And that's the end of the first quarter with the score. The Minnesota Vikings 14, the Cleveland.
Powder.
Reno.
Cool.
Tahoe. A snowball vacation on United Airlines to Reno, Tahoe.
Great skiing.
Great everything. Action, swinging, and the snowball runs from December to May. Come fly United Airlines to the exciting world of Reno, Tahoe. A world that makes the most of its days and its nights. Call your travel agent or United.
Come on, have a snowball.
By the friendly skies of United.
We're at Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington, Minnesota. With Paul Crispin, Pat Summerall, and Bruce Roberts, this is Ray Scott. Gene Washington, who just left the game, has grabbed 3 passes for 120 yards, including 1 for 75 and a TD. He is replaced now by Bob Grimm, number 27. Joe Kapp has had a huddle with the Viking coaching staff. It is 1st and 10 Minnesota at the Cleveland 18 as we start the second quarter. Grimm to the left. Henderson to the right. Bill Brown, penalty marker down. Johnson, Lindsay, and Kanicki stop the play. 15-yard infraction against the Minnesota Vikings. The ball comes back to the Cleveland 32-yard line. Holding, signaled by referee Tommy Bell, and there is Gene Washington.
And now, moving back this far, the obvious thing to do is come up with the pass. The defense also knows the obvious thing to do is to come up with the pass. So what do you come up with? This is a draw type situation, a screen type, as well as a passing situation.
It's 1st and 24. Inside the 30-yard line, John Garlington wrestles Cap out of bounds. There will be a gain of about 3 or 4 yards.
And that's why Cleveland is in this championship game. That was a screen call. They had it well covered, and there's absolutely no place to unload the ball if the screen man is covered. Here's Beasley right here. Now, he's drifted out in the flat. And you see there are a couple of men in the vicinity. There's no place to throw this ball. So finally he has to throw a block, and Joe Cap runs with it. But the wise thing to do is not to throw, because a screen pass must be thrown softly, and it's easily picked off if anybody's in the area.
It's 2nd and 20 at the 28, and Washington is back in. Dave Osborne to the 22-yard line. And it will be 3rd and 14 as Jack Gregory and Jim Houston teamed up to stop Dave Osborne. The second quarter is just underway, and the Vikings are leading by 14-0. The Vikings took the opening kickoff and took it all the way. Joe Cap scoring from 7 yards. And then, when a defender had the misfortune to fall down, Gene Washington caught a 75-yard touchdown pass. Henderson is wide right on 3rd and 14. Henderson. Defending was Ernie Kellerman.
Ray, that is the exact, see the shadows there? That's the exact corner of the Sun field. I believe that ball was in range. We'll take another look now. We've got him here. See when he turns, if the ball is in reach, it looked like he lost it. He's got a good lead on the defender here. There's a question whether he could have reached it with a jump or not, but it looked like it was within reach, but I don't think he saw the thing.
The league's leading scorer, Fred Cox, who kicked 26 of 37 field goals attempted in the regular season, will have Paul Krause holding at the Cleveland 29. It is good. The Vikings now lead by 17-0 and will be back with Minnesota's kickoff in just a moment.
The Goodyear Custom Wide Tread Polyglass Tire.
I put about 100 miles a day on the tires. And right now I have 35,000 miles on these tires, and they've given me good service. They stop beautifully, you get good mileage, they're a safe tire. Goodyear Polyglass. There's no other tire for me on the road.
If it doesn't say Goodyear, it can't be Polyglass.
Some mechanics have found an interesting answer to Standard Oil's new gasoline ingredient, Amatone. If you can't beat them, join them.
Two dangerous return men. Bo Scott, 35, nearest you. To his left, Reese Morrison. And I don't believe Morrison is wearing the traditional football shoe right now. You notice there's some kind of a rippled shoe, and Fred Cox kicks off. Bo Scott at the 11. 25. Met at the 31-yard line by Mike McGill, a reserve linebacker. Now we have word from the sidelines that several of the Browns are wearing sneakers. Passing so far, Cap 3 of 7. Nelson 1 of 5. There have been no interceptions. It is 1st and 10 Cleveland at the Cleveland 32. Paul Warfield is wearing a sneaker-type shoe, and he goes to the left. Number 42, Ed Schrockman covers him. Wide right, Collins. Leroy Kelly. Wally Hilgenberg wrestling Kelly out of bounds after a short gain. And a great number of the Browns have decided to use that rubber-soled studded type of shoe. I'm not sure about the exact terminology. Are you, Paul?
No, Ray. It has a number of cups on the bottom of the shoe. I don't know exactly how it works, though, but it certainly will give you a little better traction than cleats if the field is frozen.
It's 2nd and 7 Cleveland at the Cleveland 35. Bill Nelson. Collins. It led him by too much. Defending was McBee, the left cornerback, and it'll be 3rd and 7.
Marshall coming in there, number 70. Watch Shafrath blocking here now. Does a good job of keeping the alley open, which is all you need to do in passing. Just keep him away from the passer. But he finally breaks through. Still, Nelson has plenty of time to throw there.
It is a 3rd and 7 at the Cleveland 35. Leroy Kelly. First down, 44-yard line. Leroy Kelly, after an early season injury, came on very, very strong. And he wound up with 817 yards. He had won the rushing title the preceding 2 years. Lonnie Warwick made that tackle for Minnesota, but the Browns have a first down at the Cleveland 45-yard line. 12.5 minutes left to play first half. The Vikings lead 17-0. To the right is Collins. McBee defends against him. Bo Scott to around the 49-yard line. Next Sunday, the big one in professional football. It'll be right here on CBS. The 4th annual Super Bowl game. The National Football League champion, the winner of this game against the AFL champion, and that championship will be decided later today when Kansas City and Oakland will meet. Pre-game activity starts next Sunday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time from Tulane Stadium in New Orleans. Cleveland 2nd and 5 at midfield. Delay, Bo Scott, couple of yards, 48-yard line. Ran into Alan Page.
Alan Page, number 88. Plays off a blocker. This is another draw, incidentally. And this draw is the great equalizer. And it keeps that pass rush down. They just can't roar in there at the pass reach time. They have to keep an eye peeled for that draw. And you might notice that Nelson has called 2 out of 3 of the last plays as draws.
It is a 3rd and 3 for Cleveland at the Minnesota 48-yard line. Intended for Collins, incomplete at the 40. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first time that Cleveland has been able to cross midfield with 11 minutes and a few seconds left to play in the first half. And Bill Nelson, the Cleveland quarterback, who just turned the Cleveland Brown fortunes around when he joined them. Nelson heads to the bench, and Cockcroft is punting from inside the 40. West 40, nearest you, Grimm 27. High and out of bounds around the 20-yard line. Heaters along the sidelines where the Cleveland Browns are. With the score, the Vikings 17 and the Browns nothing. Let's pause for a moment.
Mullins, we've got to get our sales quota up this month, and when I say up, I mean up.
Nagging? Who's nagging? All I said was you're getting a little paunchy. Now, come on, is that nagging? Huh? Is that really nagging?
Hey, wow, Dad. Thanks a lot for the guitar.
If you want to get away from it all, you really don't have to go very far. Just into a quiet 1970 Ford. Give yourself a quiet break at your Ford dealers. Ford gives you better ideas. It's the going thing.
We are looking into the future. Chances are you'll smoke a cigarette that offers advanced filtration and good taste. But wait. One cigarette does all that today. True filter cigarettes. Great taste and only 12.5 milligrams tar, 0.7 milligrams nicotine. Shouldn't your brand be true today?
There is a sport known as broom ball, which is played on ice, and a number of the Cleveland players are wearing a broom ball shoe. Vikings 1st and 10, Viking 20. Oscar Reed, number 32, replaced Bill Brown as one of the Minnesota running backs. Reed is a 6-footer, second year from Colorado State, and he's done a fine job this season for the Vikings. There is a gain of 2.5, second down, 8. 10:30 left to play first half. Cap sends Henderson to the right, Washington to the left. His tight end Beasley is on the right side. Reed. And a loss back to the 15-yard line as linebackers Dale Lindsey, 51, and John Garlington, number 50, forced to play wide. Result, a loss back to the 17-yard line, and Cap is faced with a 3rd and 13. Well, the folks up here in Minnesota certainly have some unusual garb, but most of it, I would say, is practical, Paul.
I don't really think it's that cold yet, Ray, but he or she is prepared for anything.
3rd and 13, Minnesota. Washington. Defending was Barnes, incomplete. It'll be 4th down. The game started today with a temperature of 9 above zero and a wind of about 12 miles per hour. The game is a complete sellout, 47,900 watching the Vikings in their first NFL championship game ever. The Browns have won 4 NFL titles. They have played in 10 championship games, this being the 11th. Kelly and Jones, number 26. That's, I beg your pardon, Reese Morrison is the other deep man. The punter is Bob Lee. He's inside the Viking 5. Kelly, 49-yard line. So the Browns will have excellent field position. Tonight is a very special night on CBS. Ed Sullivan with Oliver, Roy Rogers, and Dale Evans, plus Phyllis Diller, followed by Glenn Campbell's Good Time Hour, and then the suspenseful Mission Impossible. Tonight, a very special night on CBS.
Bob Lee, the punter, took advantage of no rush there. They had a punt return on, so instead of 2 steps, he took 4 steps before he punted that ball.
1st and 10, Cleveland at the Viking 49. Nelson. Intercepted at the 34-yard line, and a penalty marker down. Wally Hilgenberg intercepted. The intended receiver was Bo Scott.
Nelson now throwing across field. You see him throw back to his left. And here the interception is pulled in. Now, Ray Scott said a flag dropped. I believe an official right here dropped his cap right after this to indicate where the ball was.
Right, Paul. There was no penalty. 1st and 10, Vikings, Viking 33. John Henderson defending Erich Barnes. It's close to a 1st down.
Watch Henderson on a classic sideline pattern and note how quickly the ball comes in after he makes his cut. This is the secret of all this passing right there before the defensive man can recover. With timing like that, it's pretty difficult to defend against.
There will be a measurement here for the down as wide receiver John Henderson grabs off the Joe Cap pass. During the regular season, Henderson caught 34 passes, 5 for touchdowns. Collins is the leading receiver in this game today based on regular season statistics, receiving 54, 11 for touchdowns. Warfield caught 10 touchdown passes. Washington 39 for Minnesota and 9 for touchdowns. Short of a first down. 8:40 left to play first half. The Vikings are leading 17-0. It is 2nd and 1, or a little less than 1, at the Viking 43-yard line. Henderson comes left. Sumner is defending against him. Osborne. Midfield. He's inside the 45-yard line for a first down, and Kellerman and Howell of the secondary had to stop him.
And one more time, you see Mr. Osborne apparently stopped for no gain, sometimes even a loss, just bounces and keeps rolling. Normally, on that down during the season, you would have seen Cap gamble 2nd and 1 on the proposition, that is, throw the long ball, on the proposition if he doesn't complete, he comes back and gets the 1 yard on 3rd down. But on a field like this, you can't be sure of plunging 1 yard at any time, because somebody might slip on the takeoff and you're just dead right there.
First down at the Cleveland 42 for Minnesota. Oscar Reed to the 37. Ran into Houston, 82, and Kellerman, 24. 8:20 left to play now in the first half. Reed picks up 5 yards on first down. It's 2nd down, 5. We'll have videotape highlights for you at halftime, statistics, and entertainment. The tight end is on the right side, Beasley. 2nd down, 5. Reed inside the 35, but short of a first down. Walter Johnson, the first to make contact. 3rd and short yardage at the 34-yard line, about 2 yards away from a first down.
Now the situation is a little different. He is far enough in enemy territory that if he wishes, he can gamble on this down. And Cap so often likes to fake that dive play and hit the long pass, attempted at least.
Now the Vikings have 2 tight ends in as Kent Kramer comes in and wide receiver John Henderson goes out. 3rd and 2. Osborne. He has a first down at the 30-yard line. Kellerman made the tackle. And Kent Kramer immediately leaves, and wide receiver John Henderson comes back. Number 41, and so far the running star of the game, Dave Osborne. First and 10. Oscar Reed, and very little there in the middle this time. Mainly responsible, Walter Johnson. Ron Snido helped out. Gain, 1.5 yards. 2nd down and about 8.
Somewhere along the way, we'll give you a shot of Cap between plays. He walks deliberately towards the sideline, away from the huddle. There's a reason for this. Probably he has only 10 suggestions coming up on the way back to the huddle. And so his coach, Bud Grant, has said to get away from all this, just walk away till you make up your mind and then step in the huddle.
2nd and 8. Henderson hit very hard by Barnes. Close to a first down. It is a first down.
There goes Cap for his lonely sojourn over there. He takes a look at everything, walks away, does a little thinking, then comes back in the huddle when he's made up his mind what play he wants to use.
The first down comes at the Cleveland 20-yard line, and there's Bud Grant talking with his men upstairs on the phones. Washington goes to the right, and Henderson comes out to the left side. Osborne. Touchdown.
Take a look at Osborne now. This young man simply will not be denied. You will see he's hit pretty well here. He tried to come in high on him, and you just can't do it that way. Slipped off. He kept going, cut back behind the one blocker he had ahead of him into the end zone, as you see.
Osborne has carried 8 times for 60 yards. Brett Cox puts another point on the board, and now the Vikings lead 24-0 and will be back with Minnesota's kick.